Network's subscribe.
And welcome everybody to Haunting Live podcast. This week we have reached episode number 5 of season 2 already. And thank you. I just want to reach out to everybody and say thank you so much for following us here through our first season on 2020 and into 2021 this year. We have a lot of guests booked and lined up well into April, so stay tuned for a whole bunch of great guests coming on to Haunting Live podcast this season. And also thank you so much for following us on social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, and of course, you can find us on the podcast apps as well, like iTunes, Spotify, and TuneIn, and all those other ones as well. But today we have a very special guest on the show. He's joining us from all the way out west. He's well known to be on the APTN network on the TV show The Other Side. He is also known as Canada's Most Dangerous Mind. Please welcome to the show, Jeff Richards. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Trevor. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for being here.
Good.
You're coming all the way from out west. I know you live out in Saskatchewan, so thank you so much for taking the time out today to join us here on Haunting Live.
No worries. It's my pleasure.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about the background of how you got started. I know you're more known for being on the show on APTN, The Other Side, hosting that show. You're the main person on there. But I know you also have dealt with intuitive work and stuff like that. So let's start with the intuitive side of things and sort of how did that develop in your life?
Well, it's sort of one of those stories where it sort of fell into my lap, more so than I pursued it. And in saying that, it's like we always hear about these experiences that people have that are sort of this awakening, where they understand or maybe start to look closer at what's possible for us to do using things like intuition or whatever it might be. So for me, I had always had a love for all things paranormal. Ever since I was a little kid, ranging from watching shows like Sightings, I don't know if you recall that one, or In Search of, narrated by Leonard Nimoy, where they would basically show, it was like a mini doc series where they'd show a variety of, subjects that are paranormal based, and they talk about everything from cryptozoology to Satanism to ghosts to whatever it might be. So I had always been just absolutely enamored with that type of program and the idea that things existed sort of beyond the veil that we could see and that we could physically touch. And on a more dramatic note, 93, because I'm a child of the 90s, the X-Files, that played such a huge role in really fostering my own interest in that. And all of these things were sort of swirling around in my mind for quite a while. And I had an experience when I was a little kid, when I was just a young guy. I had been visited by my grandfather, and he I remember very vividly, I had laid down to sleep. My head hit the pillow, and next thing I know, I heard a creak at the end of my bed. I was actually staying at my grandmother's house in rural Saskatchewan, and I heard this creak. I looked up, and there was Grandpa, and he's standing at the foot of my bed, and he just sort of smiled at me. He waved, and then he turned around, he walked back out of the room, and I went to sleep and didn't really think anything of it. Woke up the following day, and I had learned that overnight, tragically, my grandfather had passed away. Now, as a child, I thought, oh, Grandpa popped in to visit. Like, he physically popped in to see me, before he got really sick and he died. But as an adult, you start to kind of put together the facts, and you start to realize that there are a number of circumstances around that visitation that just made it impossible. First of all, he was in the hospital and had been for weeks and weeks, about 100 kilometers away from where my grandmother's house even was. So he wasn't even physically in the residence at that time. But also my grandfather never did the stairs in my grandma and grandpa's house. So I was up on the top floor. He, in all the time that I knew him, never once climbed those stairs. So the fact that I'm up there and he appeared to me up there says again that in the physical sense, he couldn't have possibly have been there. So as an adult, I recollected that experience, and in my journey to try and sort of determine what it was possible for me to do with my own skill set, that was one of the stories. And then everything sort of came to a head when I was 19. I was involved in a car accident that I had a dream about this accident a few days prior, and then there I was involved in the exact same physical incident, and it really sent me into a spiral. Physically, mentally, emotionally, it was not good, and I, to sort of come out of a lot of that trauma that I experienced, began to sort of look into, well, why did I have this dream? What was it that I was accessing that showed me this accident before it even happened? What was I meant to avoid it? Was I, being shown something? Was something trying to save me or protect me? What was the reason for this? And as anybody that encounters an event that sort of changes their way of thinking or affects them in a strongly negative way, you begin to sort of question all the circumstances around that event. And that's when things like the visitation from my grandfather came flooding back, and other incidents that I had experienced all throughout my life. I started to kind of take stock of them and go, okay, there's obviously something here that I'm working with or that I'm accessing that I'm not fully understanding. So my quest at that point was to not only tap into my own intuitive ability through the teaching of some great mentors and friends who've I've been able to work with over the years, but then also to try to reach out to spirit. Was it possible, using these skills or these connections, these abilities that I felt as though I was already accessing, was it possible to pick up and connect with spirit? And I discovered that absolutely, it is entirely possible. So the pathway, I think, was long and winding, and it was sort of fueled by generally just a love for all things paranormal. I already had a vested interest, and then, as I said, these experiences that were occurring all throughout my life led me at that flashpoint of the car accident at 19. That's the point when I started, again, just putting everything together and realized, not only do I have a skill set here, but I should be growing this skill set. I should be fine-tuning this. I should be nurturing this. I should be using this in some way that might be, useful or practical or might help someone change and grow, might help myself change and grow, and certainly give me a better understanding of the relationship that we have with spirit, the relationship that we have with, the other side. So, it's an interesting path, I think, that I've taken, but really, I came from a root of being spiritually connected. I think historically, throughout the course of my life, I'd heard stories of relatives and ancestors and people on both sides of my family tree who had some perceived ability, had some ability to connect with something. There's a famous story of my great-grandmother on my father's side sort of going into a bit of a rage at one point, so to speak, and suddenly the lights in the house began to dim and flicker, and then the bulbs all popped in the living room, lamps and chandeliers. And so there's these stories of some sort of ability. So I think that it was something that was there, that I just needed to kind of have that moment, that flashpoint moment of the car accident, to open the doorway a little bit more and allow for me to investigate it further. So, that's the Coles Notes version, Cliff Notes version of it, I guess. So it's a journey, still on it.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like you had an awakening of some sort at different points in your life. So back when you were a child, you heard the creak, and that was sort of like an awakening point for you to say, okay, there's something here that's I should be paying attention to. But then later on, you had the car accident, which really drew you into it more. After the car accident, though, did you know that you wanted to get into it more? Did you know that you wanted to dive into it and find out more about it? And
that lit such a fuse, and I started investigating other incidents historically. There's the story of the Aberfan tragedy in Europe, where a coal slip moved down a hill, a mountainside, and crushed an entire village in coal, and a schoolhouse was crushed. So there's numerous stories there of people having dreams about this tragedy before it occurred, or people who professed to have dreamt of 9/11 before it happened. You know, there are all these moments where it seemed like dreams and intuition were at play. And I started researching those moments and trying to kind of connect the dots and to determine, well, why was it that I was able to see the accident before it occurred for myself? You know, what was the reason behind it? And so, yeah, that car accident absolutely lit that fire and drove me to try and discern a little bit more about this. I was hunting my own ghost, my own mystery at that point, so to speak, in a way, to try and figure out exactly what this was.
Right, and after you experienced that vision of the car accident, was there any details through that vision that you had of any intuition that came to you about it? Was there a chance for you to avoid it, or was there any chance of you not getting into the accident because of your vision?
I remember that there was a song that played on the radio that, you know, when I think back, if I had known what I know now, like now I understand that it would have been possible for me through dream techniques and lucid dreaming and things to potentially go back into that dream and sort of peruse that dreamscape for clues. But the song that was playing on the radio, you know, I could have probably glanced at the date on my cell phone to determine what date and time the accident was occurring. I mean, there were probably lots of things that I could have done, but at the time that I had it, I mean, I just chalked it up to just another nightmare. No, I didn't think of it as an intuitive moment. I just thought of it as, well, this is just a nightmare that I've had, and we've all had them. We've all, you know, seen things or been chased through houses in our dreams or had negative moments. So I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't until the accident actually occurred that I went, okay, something was at play here. I was being shown something, and I should have listened to it. You know, I should have been paying closer attention, and that's when I really started that quest to figure out what was going on intuitively. What was happening? Is it possible that we're showing glimpses of our future every night when we're sleeping and dreaming? And so, yeah, that was a big moment.
That's another interesting thing that you just brought up, that you thought of it as a nightmare. So have you had nightmares throughout your childhood? Is it something that was reoccurring to you all the time, or?
Yeah, I think everybody has a certain degree of nightmares or night terrors, whatever you want to call it, that's healthy. I mean, in part, it's our body's or our psyche's way of dealing with trauma and stress and anxieties and things of that nature. But, you know, this was a bit different in that it seemed so vivid and so real. You know, I'd had dreams, but none of them, from my recollection up to that point, had come to fruition in such a massively critical way. So yeah, it was just one of those things that kind of flashed for me and lit that fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. It's a good way of connecting with that intuitiveness and developing that. So moving on though from that, has there been any, when you're developing that as a child, was it really open to you as a child? Like, were people receptive to you diving into that more and opening that more as a person, like when you're developing your intuition?
Yeah, I think that, you know, there are certain aspects of my upbringing that kind of made it a little more difficult. Probably it wasn't the most fostering environment, but certainly, you know, I did have some support, and I also had the wherewithal and the, you know, the strength as an individual to keep on, you know, looking into it and investigating as much as I could. So, you know, it's one of those things where I think if you do have the appropriate support team around you, you can dig deeper. I talked to literally probably 110 different clients every year, working on intuitive development with them, and I find the common story in people that are trying to develop and grow intuition is that at some point in their lives, they just made the call that it was a fallacy. It wasn't true. It didn't exist. And so they tucked intuition away because they stopped believing in it. And it's like anything else. It's like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, it gets weak, it goes away, you lose it. So the key is that you really have to, sort of focus on it, grow it, and strengthen it. I came to the game a little late, 19 years old, started exercising that intuitive muscle. But I'm so happy that I did, because it's opened up an entirely new world to me in a lot of ways, and I've been very thankful for, as much as that accident was a negative, I'm thankful in a lot of ways that it happened, because it really set the stage for everything that came after.
Right, and let's jump into that area a little bit now too. So I know from your past history that we were just talking before we went on air here today that you've been involved in the radio field in the past. You're a radio show host. But from there, obviously, you have jumped into the world of TV as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you were discovered and how you made it onto the show The Other Side?
So it's kind of an interesting story, and I love to tell it, because it really shows how sometimes the perception of the paranormal is so negative that it can blind people. But basically, I had been given an opportunity to conduct a series of seances and a paranormal talk at a museum in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, the Western Development Museum. And basically what had happened is they had publicized that I was going to be there doing this seance and doing this paranormal talk. And certain groups within the community of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan got a little bit, they got quite concerned. And they started raising their concerns in a vocal way. These were, some religious organizations and different, just for the sake of keeping things, kind of whatever here, I'll call them special interest groups. These groups started to basically contact the museum that this event was supposed to be happening at, and threatened to protest, threatened to go to local government and have their funding pulled, and et cetera, et cetera. And it really got nasty really quick. And the event actually got canceled. Well, that caused a little bit of, I should say a lot of interest to be generated from the media. And there were stories that were carried in a number of, national newspapers about this. It was all over. It made its way into the sort of the free press, and I was doing radio interviews, TV interviews. I was featured in news articles about this, because the seance event that was supposed to happen was supposed to be sort of a fun, informative, Halloween-inspired event, and it got destroyed by this group, which was really sad. And it kicked up a bit of a storm. The producers of The Other Side had sort of seen a little bit of that controversy brewing, and they reached out to me and said, hey, we see the work that you're doing. We think you'd be a great fit for this program. And that's really history after that. So those groups that threatened to protest and got that first event shut down, I jokingly say I reach out and I send them a Christmas card every year because they were pretty instrumental in putting a spotlight on the work that I was doing, which was nice.
Yeah, so basically you have them to thank for where you are nowadays. So
yeah, it's funny how fate just sort of works out that way, And as I said, it was really unfounded fear. They had seen the word seance and knew we were going to be looking at the history of spiritualism and the paranormal, and sort of taking people through the museum to try and do a little bit of a attempt at communication and maybe gather some evidence and do a little bit of a paranormal investigation. And it scared some people. They didn't want that, and for all the wrong reasons, obviously. But there's a sort of this misconception that we were going to open some sort of portal through which evil was gonna jump and corrupt the entire community. Just really ridiculous things, and the type of notion that sort of is perpetuated by, in some ways, Hollywood, and in some ways, just the machine of entertainment sort of drives this idea that talking to the dead or trying to communicate with spirit is inherently evil, and these people sort of bought into that. And so it's fortunate that it happened. It's unfortunate that those beliefs kind of existed at the time, and I think still do today. But at the same time, it allowed for me to walk through a doorway that, in a pretty big way, I think has helped to educate a lot of people about the paranormal, to show them that it's possible to do investigations in a way that are safe and respectful, and it's not all hocus pocus, it's not all evil and Ouija boards and whatever other sort of Hollywood tropes people put on paranormal investigation and paranormal work. So I've been fortunate because I've been able to sort of demystify a little bit of those misconceptions about what the work truly is. So yeah, it started as a negative, but we flipped it into a positive real quick, and it's just all about showing people what the reality of the situation is. It's not evil. It's exploratory, and it's necessary. We have to reach out. We have to try and communicate. We have to know. We have to find these answers in some way.
Yes, totally agree with you 100% on that. We've experienced that issue ourselves when we go out to do investigations here in Ontario as well. So it definitely is an issue that still is around. And that is one thing here at Haunting Live podcast we try to do, is teach people the difference between what they see on TV or in movies is not what real paranormal is all about, which is why we do what we do. We do live events, obviously not as much right now during COVID, but when we're allowed to, we do have live events and have people out to try to teach them in person, say, hey, look, this is what real paranormal investigating is all about. Some people might have a different mindset about that, but we try to show them what it is really about and what they can do with it. So on that topic, though, did you find that when you were kind of developing your own abilities, did you run into a lot of people that were kind of like negative about it, or were they kind of more open to you doing your stuff?
There are always going to be people who cast a negative shadow on things that they don't understand. There are always those individuals who are going to throw their arms up and object, and usually it's out of fear and, as I said, a lack of really understanding. The occurrences that I faced, whether it was the backlash from the Western Development Museum event, even now today, even still, I know you said that it still exists, and I agree, the negative attitude towards it still does exist. I mean, I've had people in communities not want for me and my team to investigate because they were afraid that there was going to be some negative recourse and repercussions that occurred. I remember sitting in a chair at a salon getting my hair done once, getting a haircut, and the young lady who was doing it asked me, well, what do you do? And I explained, and she goes, I don't want to talk about that. She got very scared very quickly. So yeah, there is still a fear. There's a fear of the unknown. There's a fear of interacting with the paranormal. But thankfully, networks, mainstream television networks have been very open to putting programming like our show and several other programs that are on the air out there. And so it's really kind of, I think, in some ways, inoculated a lot of the public against that fear. But that fear still exists, and I faced it when I was growing and developing. I face it today, and I think it's something that we will continue to have to battle into the future. People are always going to kind of push back against something that they don't understand, and if fear is the primary motivator, that stops a lot of progress from happening. And you find this, whether you're talking about people that are objecting to religious practices or preferences that people have or political leanings. There's always going to be those that are afraid, and so they push back, and they push back in a way that usually is pretty negative. So we're not immune to that. We're still going to get that, and certainly I faced it throughout my coming up and growing and learning.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I think it's going to be around for a while, but that's one other point I just thought of as well, is with your show and with other shows out there, a lot of other shows on TV right now have a certain angle to them or a certain vibe to them. They try to promote certain things. They have, I find, a lot of false information, I'll say, on it that isn't true. But with your show, I found you guys are so genuine. You guys are so direct in one way, which is the native route that you guys follow. And I think that's just wonderful, the way that you guys conduct your show on air.
Oh, thank you, Trevor. I mean, yeah, it's true. Every show has its own spin and its own angle. I've seen some very good work and some very good evidence capture come out of some of these other programs as well. Do I always agree with their approach or their theories? No, not necessarily. And I know that sometimes things are done for a way that is meant to be taken as more entertainment or more sensational. One thing with our program, we've always tried to kind of steer the ship as directly as we can, as far as integrity and as far as genuinely representing what takes place. So if there's an event that happens and we capture it, we reflect that, but we never embellish anything that happened. There's no editing, there's no camera, trickery, there's none of that. It's all very raw, it's very genuine. Very authentic. We're very authentic in our own beliefs, myself and Aaron Goodpipe and our elder Tom, as well as all the production team, many of which have been with us since the very beginning. We all are very firm in our beliefs, and we all understand that we're dealing with spirit, and it needs to be done in a very respectful, genuine, honest sort of way, where other programs don't necessarily, carry that same attitude. So I think that's one of the things that has really set us apart. We are not afraid to put an episode on television where nothing happens, where there's no ghost, where we don't find anything. Because the reality of the situation is, we don't always find something. We don't always get evidence. We don't always make contact. It's hard. It's difficult to make contact sometimes. And there have been incidents where we haven't found anything, and we're not afraid to air that. We're not afraid to show that. It adds, to our authenticity. We want to represent it faithfully and honestly, and to do so, you have to show those moments. And so, yeah, I'm always overjoyed at the fact that people really connect with the fact that we are such a genuine article, that the program is rooted in this indigenous spirituality that is so vital to our country and to our global populace. Like, there are First Peoples on every continent, and we have to really honor the traditions of those individuals and the teachings, the knowledge that has been gained from people who are so interconnected to the earth and to nature and to the spirit realm, so we reflect that indigenous heartbeat. It's there, beating very strongly in every episode, and I'm so very proud of that, and I think it adds huge to the authenticity of our program. Tom Charles, our elder, on the other side, is the genuine article. He's one of the most grounded and real people that I've ever had the pleasure of working with in my life. And at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all have stories. We all have experiences and knowledge, and that's really what you see represented on the show.
Yes, definitely. And I was going to mention that about your other colleagues on the show. I just want to reach out to them as well and say a big thank you for them to be on the show. I'm a big fan of you guys. I've been watching you guys for quite a while. And yourself, Jeff, and Tom, and Aaron, you guys are just amazing on the show, and you represent the Native community really well. And you definitely carry on the practices of the Native community and the practices that you guys do on the show. So that's really amazing.
It's an absolute honor to be a part of it, and to hear you say that. I'll pass that on. Hopefully they hear it when they listen as well. But I'll let them know.
Yeah, well, that'd be an honor too as well. If Tom and Aaron want to have a listen to this episode, definitely pass it on to them. That'd be great. But let's continue on with your part of the show that you guys deal with. I know you've been to many different seasons already. You're finished filming season 6, you were saying, and you're also filmed season 7, which isn't out yet. But through your past episodes, there is one topic I would like to touch on just quickly. There was an encounter that you had, and it was a bit more on the negative side. Can you talk a little bit about that, and what was that entity that you think you encountered, and how are you dealing with that still?
You know, the only I used to always say that the spirit couldn't harm you. There's only the living that could harm you, and I believe that. I wore that faithfully. That ideal. The problem is, early in our shooting of season 1, a number of years ago, we encountered this energy that seemed to be intensely negative. It kind of postured a bit and put itself out there as being some sort of a demonic energy or the devil or whatever it is. It definitely tried to convince myself and the other members of the team at that time, Bill Connolly and Priscilla Wolf. It tried to show us, and Tom Charles as well, its strength and its power, and it did so by acting out and interfering in investigations, and at one point scratching me. I got physically attacked by this energy in season 1. It left some fairly big marks on my body across my neck, and I remember feeling the heat and the pain of whatever it was that was affecting me physically. And then when the lights came up and the cameras stopped rolling, I remember everybody that was present, all the crew, sort of just looking at me like, is this for real? Like, is he okay? Like, what is happening here? And it really started to kind of change their perception and changed my perception. I wandered out into the street after that first attack happened in season 1, and I got physically ill. All over the road, I threw up. I was so scared because something that I couldn't see had a physical effect on my body. It attacked, it lashed out, it hurt me in a way, and I just about quit the show. I remember after that event happened, myself and Bill Connolly and our director at the time, fantastic guy by the name of Rob King, he took me and Bill back to our hotel in where we were staying, and he took us for, I think I grabbed a burger from like a fast food place on the way, and then we went back to his room and we drank Irish whiskey and ate cheeseburgers, and then I wandered back to my room and I stayed up all night long. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, couldn't stop looking at the marks, and at that point I thought, I'm a new dad. I've got little boys at home. I have to protect my family in some way, and if this energy can reach out and attack me, there's a chance it can reach out and harm my kids. And so I just about walked away. I remember I didn't sleep all night. I got up, I did a quick steam bath in the sauna at the hotel, and I was done that, and then I was walking out to the hall to go and tell our director that I was quitting the show. And as fate would sort of have it, I'm walking to his room and his door popped open. It's like he knew I was coming, and he said, "Hey, come on in here, we've got to talk." And he just sort of reiterated the fact that this was work that needed to be done, and we needed to connect with these spirits, and it was meant to be in some way, and that I could do a lot of good by using these skills and communicating. And so I went and sort of gained some strength and power from that pep talk that we had. But it absolutely terrified me at that moment, and that energy has persisted over the course of 150 plus investigations and 7 seasons of television. We have been having to deal with this presence, and everybody who's worked on the show has seen it. We've all felt it. Season 6, it's revealed that Tom Charles, our elder and good friend of mine, had been dealing with some very, very negative health issues over the last little while. And Tom's, one of his questions he asks at the finale of season 6 is, is it possible that this energy has finally found a way to sort of get Tom out of the picture? Is it possibly the energy, this entity, this character that is making Tom sick? And we don't know. We do know that it does seem to occasionally target Tom. I do know that we do get negative communications happening that do seem to put Tom as a focus. It does seem to sometimes be focused on me. Sometimes it seems to be focused on our guests. It seems to sometimes pose as members of people's family. I mean, there are so many issues that have cropped up over the course of 7 seasons because of this entity, this energy. If I'm kind of just talking openly here for a moment, our last encounter with this thing was at the APTN studios, October 31st, Halloween. We did a live event where we investigated APTN. We were fully expecting to speak with some of the energies that have seemingly been present in that television studio for the last, several years. But this thing came through and lashed out again, and it's lashed out a couple times. I've physically felt the effects of it a couple times. I feel that when we are together and we are forming this team and we are actually working on the project, that gives it power. I think that if I can just speak for a moment about the presence, because I think what it is it's not that we have an attachment. It's not that I have an attachment, or Tom has an attachment, or Aaron has an attachment, or anything of that nature. But I think that what's happening is, I think that the other side, as a energy, as an idea, I think the show is haunted. Truly, I think that we have something that is attached to our program and to our team, and when our team comes together, it shows up. It's really interesting. I can't fully explain what it is or what it wants. It's something that we've dealt with. It seems to come in and interact with us during investigations. It seems to try to taint some of our communication, or take over communication sometimes. It's really been a pain, but one that we deal with when we need to. So but it's out there. Whatever it is out there, and it tries its best to make its way back to each one of us in some fashion.
Right. Do you think it's something that has developed over time with you all being together? Like you said, you think it's something that's haunting your whole show. Do you think it's something that sort of manifested as you guys all had different backgrounds, I'm assuming, in different areas? So you're intuitive. Tom's the elder, so he has a lot of more, I guess, like background history in the field of what you guys deal with. I'm not sure what Aaron has as background, but I'm sure all you guys have a different background. Do you think as you do your work together that is fueling things and sort of manifesting things?
I think that sometimes what occurs is even simply the act of talking about this energy or mentioning it by name powers it. I think that, the idea that we are haunted by something is very real, and I think that it does stick around and does seem to come up and draw, or try to draw power from our individual backgrounds. It tries to cause infighting on the set. It tries to do a bunch of things to sort of throw us off and cause us to not be able to do our job. So, one of the theories that was put out ages ago was that perhaps it is a collector of sorts, and that as we are journeying across the country to all these different spaces that are supernaturally charged, where there is an energy that does want to reach out and communicate, and we make communication happen. Once we've communicated, well, then this energy swoops in and sort of feeds off of that spiritual energy that we've called forward. So perhaps this is actually literally a collector of spiritual energy that sort of tags along as in a predatory way, taking on those energies. I mean, I don't know. These are theories. These are things that we've been talking about for a long time as a cast and crew. It does continue today. We do still have it come up. It did come up very prevalently in season 6, very prevalently in season 7. 7 years out, and then we did sort of have a bit of a altercation with it on Halloween during our live broadcast. So it's still very much a part of our project, unfortunately.
Yeah. Is there any way that you're finding you're able to sort of protect yourself from the energy, or have you found a way to sort of deal with it yet? Or is it kind of something that you're going to have to work on more?
Well, we all have our different approaches, I think, as a crew. One of my big things is to not talk about it and use its name. I think that when we use its name, it draws power from that. So I'm often approached by our producers to talk about it and use its name, and I'm always a little apprehensive because I think that kind of energizes it. I have always felt that I have been somewhat protected. There are things that I carry with me that are protective, that guard me, that are keeping me safe. There are things that Erin does to protect herself, certainly things that Tom and Alan, our elder in season 7, do to keep themselves safe. But we haven't really found the key to keeping it at bay just yet. We've done battles and we've fought and we've approached it in a what we see as a strong way, but it still hangs on. So all we can do is try to mitigate its effect. We can try and lessen the consequences of it coming forward.
Right. And I was just thinking that as well. It might be actually something that's keeping you on your toes, so to speak, something that's there to always make you aware of what the dangers are during paranormal investigations, right? So it's something there to keep you on your toes.
There certainly are lessons to be learned from its presence, and I think that's a very astute observation, that it does keep us on our toes. It does keep us in a place where we are being safeguarded, or trying to safeguard ourselves as much as possible. We are on the ready at every turn, and in part because of this.
Yes, definitely. So in the future, I hope you guys do find a solution to that, but maybe it is something that's there to, like I just said, keep you on your toes, to keep you aware of your surroundings during investigations and help you protect yourself in different ways as well. So, but thank you, Jeff, so much for being here today with us on Haunting Live. Just before I do let you go, though, are there any things that you would like to promote? Of course, you got your new season 7 coming up shortly, but anything else that you're working on that you want to promote before we go?
Season 7 is going to be hopefully airing in the fall of 2021. There are other projects that I'm involved with APTN that are going to be airing soon. Travel Channel, or Detour in Canada. We have the Alaska Triangle, which is another program that I've been involved in season 1, and now I come back for the second season as well. So you're going to see me on TV quite a bit, regardless of the COVID pandemic. We found a way to kind of work around a lot of the restrictions and things that, and do it in a safe manner that allows us to still get these stories told. So there's been a lot of remote things that have been done over the last little while. But outside of that, I mean, if individuals are interested, they can always reach out to me on Facebook, facebook.com/talkparanormal. I am always available for intuitive readings and intuitive coaching for individuals who might want to grow and strengthen their intuition. And because of the pandemic, I actually have rediscovered my love for visual art. So what I've started to do is generate intuitive artwork, pieces that I do for people that really sort of draw from them during a session, a 1-hour session. I draw from them their sort of soul purpose, their their flame that sort of guides and directs them, and then I create a beautiful piece of artwork for them to look at and to kind of draw strength from every single day. So there's a lot of projects that I'm working on. I've got a tarot deck that'll be coming out very soon. Tons of stuff. But for the meantime, if anybody wants updates, jeffrichards.ca or facebook.com/talkparanormal. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram @realmindreader. Always around.
Oh, that's one other question I do want to ask just before we do let you go. How did you get that nickname, Canada's Most Dangerous Mind?
That actually came from the National posted an article on me a few years back, and it was during the whole controversy about the Moose Jaw Western Development Museum seance. The work that I was doing with spirit, they said, given the other skill set that Jeff has, he truly is Canada's most dangerous mind. So that was given to me by the press a little while ago. I've kept it because a lot of the time the idea of somebody who can perhaps connect with your secrets or know things about you without, knowing things about you, just know things about you intuitively, can be looked at as sort of a dangerous thing, or an odd sort of skill that puts people off sometimes. So dangerous is always supposed to be sort of tongue-in-cheek, and it's supposed to be more about the suspense and the wonder that's created out of the idea that we can communicate without uttering a single word. So that's sort of the play that we've been using. But that was given to me by a member of the National Post quite a few years ago.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you, though, so much for coming on to Haunting Live for this episode. We greatly appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and being able to join us here and have a quick interview with us here today on Haunting Live.
No worries. Happy to do it anytime.
Great. We appreciate that. And with that, thank you very much for being our guest, and we'll talk to you later on.
Thanks so much, Trevor. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And that was Jeff Richards from the APTN show, The Other Side. And as I just said, I really want to thank him and his staff and the other cast members for allowing him to take time out to be here today with us on Haunting Live podcast for episode 5 of season 2. So just before we do end the podcast here today, we do have a few announcements that we want to make here just for Haunting Live. First of all, we announced last night on our website, we do have a sale going on under our merch page. So from today until February the 6th, 2021, all merch products on HauntingLivePodcast.com/merch will be half off. Go check out the details on the website for our merch sale. Also, we have event tickets available for Ghost of the Queens 2021 public event. That's going to be happening in April this year, April 16th weekend to the 18th. And tickets for that price are $140. And you guys can purchase those directly through our website if you're local and are planning on attending a public event with us. Also, don't forget Chris of Haunting Live Podcast. He hosts his free reading nights on Wednesday nights here on our Facebook page at 8:30. If you have any questions or you want a free reading, just pop into our Facebook page on Wednesday nights and you can grab a free reading from Chris from Haunting Live. So otherwise, guys, that's about it for this weekend. Thank you very much for tuning in to our podcast this week. You can find us on Facebook, you can find us on YouTube, and of course, you can find us on all the podcast apps and listen to them at your leisure under ones like Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, Google, and more. So thank you guys so much. Again, a big thank you to the guest this week, Jeff Richards from The Other Side TV show on APTN. And with that, guys, have a great week, and we'll tune in next week. Thank you very much.
Did you hear that? Thanks for watching. And of course, subscribe.